Welcome and good evening. Here is a special two-show edition of Libertarian Counterpoint. James and I have selected a couple shows that you may have missed, and we're going to put those out here for you tonight. We're on for 1 hour, so enjoy. I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Hopefully at this point your week is not over. Enjoy your vacation. James, our host, go ahead, James.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us. We want to thank Access Sacramento for being here so can express ourselves to our community and we can become a more bonded community. It has been a growth of a last year for Counterpoint. We got back into the studio. We're trying to relearn how to do all these, relearn all of our old processes. And it's been quite a bit of an exciting year. And we're looking to a few exciting years ahead. As change is always on the horizon, it is up to us, all of us here at Counterpoint, us here in our community, to be kinder, be gentler, be a little bit more mindful how we approach the future. And with that, here's two shows that you probably missed because of us. As you relax, sit back, have a good evening, and please remember, from Team Counterpoint, to love everybody. Good night.
Welcome. I'm Gail Morgan, the producer of Libertarian Counterpoint. I'd like to welcome you to a special broadcast with nobody in the studio today. This is pre-recorded for Thanksgiving, and we'd like to wish each one of you a happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure you all have things to be thankful for, and I would suggest that you recount those today and thinking about how blessed we each are, how wonderful things in life are if we take a positive look towards those. Among the things that I'm thankful for the crew here that helps us put on this show each week, and I'm thankful for the host and the guests that he has every week so that you can have a show to watch. And with that, I'll turn it over to James Just, our host. James, it's all yours.
And thank you, Gail. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, Jason. With me is Jason McPhee from Knuckleheads of Liberty and Leon Brathwaite, also from the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I want to thank you for allowing us into your living rooms on this special day. But before we get to what we're individually thankful for, I want to talk a bit about the concept of thankfulness. You know, it's something that as we go on this day of thankfulness, do we express our thankfulness throughout the rest of the year appropriately? I mean, we've just finished an election recently that has kind of exposed the divides in our country and how deep they are and how unhappy many people are. But are we as a culture and as a community, are we thankful for what we actually have, for the benefits that we do have? I mean, we come here and we complain every week about all the stuff going on, and maybe rightfully so. But maybe we should all take a little bit more time, a little bit more often, and, sit with ourselves about what we are thankful for and why that thankfulness is important. No, Leon, please.
To answer your question about whether we are thankful during the course of the year, I think the answer is no to that. We are not as thankful as we should be. I think when I use the word we in this particular case, I think we are talking about we as citizens of this great land. And I don't think we are thankful for the blessings that this land provides us. It is true that we have problems, but every institution, every country, every business, every family, have their problems. And these are the challenges that we must face in life. But we should be thankful for the blessings that have been provided to us. Now, whether you believe in God or you believe in evolution, or whether you believe in a divine creator or you believe that we jumped out of the sea and became man, it really does not matter. We should be thankful for the people in our lives. We should be thankful to our family, our community, and to the blessings that we have been provided with. by being a part of this great society called the United States of America.
Jason?
Well, it's funny you've addressed the God side of it. I was going to maybe address the gov side of it or the government side of it. And given the fact that, it's funny, we have this one day of Thanksgiving, but the rest of the year, we seem to expect so much from our government and maybe take so much from our government that you think about we're in $31 trillion worth of debt. You might say we're in a thanks-taking mode most of the time. Because after all, this is all stuff that we've sort of borrowed from our future. So and it almost seems too like people aren't really that thankful for it either. So it kind of makes you wonder, what we've got and what we're doing to ourselves. And every time you turn around, the government's promising us more stuff that costs more stuff or more debt to the future. So I don't know, but certainly there's a lot of things outside of government to be thankful for. But boy, I tell you, the way we seem to be living as a society seems a little more like thanks-taking than Thanksgiving.
Well, that's actually an interesting question, because has the explosion in size and scope of government, is that maybe part of the reason we're less thankful? Because we've turned over so much of what we used to be responsible for as individuals and as communities and as, whatever communities we want. Our communities, our churches, our, Access Sacramento, our community organizations were what used to bind us together, but now we've kind of passed that responsibility on. That responsibility now has been passed on to bureaucrats, and does that make us less thankful because we don't actually have to do the work anymore? Someone else has to do the work now.
Well, it is true what you're saying. I think both of you guys are saying, and it is true that we have some crazy people out there who call themselves Democrats, who sell nothing but dependency to the citizens of the United States. But I think we should still be thankful for the fact that we still have the ability and the capacity to fight these things. I think even in the fight, we should be thankful. There are places in the world where you don't have that. Now, I was not born here in the United States. You can probably tell that from my accent. I came here when I was 20 and a half years old. And I didn't understand the concepts of liberty. I didn't understand what life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness meant. I didn't understand what it is to have property rights. It's not to say I came from a country where oppression was widespread, but I came from a country where socialism was widespread. Actually, our country, the founding father of our country was a socialist. He died in 1981. But the point is, though, when you understand what makes this country what it is, even though we have problems, as I said before, we have lots of problems, big problems, and dependency is a big problem. It is expanding the size and scope of government, and many of us fellow citizens are buying into this whole dependency game. But I do believe that we have the ability and the capacity to fight these things. And while we have that, I think it's something we should be thankful for.
I've got a question, Leon. We use this word fight, and there are places in the world where people do have to really genuinely fight for their freedoms.
True.
And so I always become reluctant for us in the United States to talk about how we're fighting for our freedoms. We're working for our freedoms. But there's other places in the world that are genuinely fighting for our freedoms. I prefer to use a different term, and I think maybe it makes me more thankful that we don't have to fight for our freedoms, that we do get to work for our freedoms, that we don't have to actually sit there and have a physical fight. We don't have to use guns. We don't have to use our fists. We don't have to use sticks. We get to fight here with our words. So that's more, for me, I try to view that more as work rather than fighting. And my view in that is your actions follow your words. And so if you put yourself into a fighting mindset, then we end up having the condition where we're at now, where we're always fighting. because we're always talking about fighting when what we're really talking about is working towards a better future, working towards a more freer society or whatever that goal is. And it's maybe it's semantics. you know, you can make an argument that it's semantics.
I was just going to say that I think we might be following a path here of a little bit of semantics here.
Yeah.
Because you're right, you're absolutely right that in many parts of the world, the fight is actually physical, where you have to, get out the guns and get out your whatever to fight against an oppressive government or the oppressive dictator or something like that. But I hold on to this truth, okay, that you can either fight with bullets or you can fight with the ballot. And here in the United States, I think the fight is on with the ballot. And we have a big fight on our hands to promote election integrity. We have a big fight on our hand to keep our public schools free from the garbage that they're trying to put into the schools. And we have a big fight on our hands to take care of the national debt, with Jason raised, which is a very serious problem. We have those fights on our hands. But our tool to fight now is the ballot box. I hope to God we never get to the bullets. I hope to God. But I will not exclude it.
What's funny, both of you guys are saying a semantic issue between fighting and working here, and I mean, to me, it seems like we're lying down while our freedoms are being taken away from us. It does not seem like our freedoms are advancing. It very much seems like our freedoms are receding right now, and I'm just very worried for the future of my children, and and if their children will even really know what freedom is, the way things are going.
Isn't that kind of the real danger, right? Because kids who are growing up now don't know what freedom used to be. They don't know that you used to be able to speak freely without really being worried about having your whole life destroyed. That you could say uncomfortable things and your life wouldn't be completely destroyed, and now you don't get that choice. And so that is a difference, right? Where people who are being raised now, people who are 12, 13 years old, they're not going to have the same experiences as people who are 30 and 40, 50 years old who lived in a much, I don't necessarily want to say freer time, because in many ways we're freer than we were, and in some ways we're not.
We're not, yes.
But so it's a strange, it's not a linear discussion, but the reality is in some parts of our freedom have been restricted, and some people are all too happy with that.
Yeah.
Well, and true. I agree with you. And I think one of our founders, I don't remember which one, did say that if we give up our liberties for security, we deserve neither. Okay, and I do believe that.
I think that's supposed to be Franklin, I think.
Yeah, I think it was Franklin. Yeah, I think you're correct about that. But this concept of lying down, I'm not totally there with you on that, Jason, because just this week on our show, Knuckleheads of Liberty, we had a representative from FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights and Education or something like that. That's what the acronym stands for. And they are putting up, to me, a very healthy fight on the campuses, well, mostly on the campuses now. They've talked about going other places. But they are putting up a fight over this same free speech issue, okay, which is very, very important. Before the ACLU went woke, they were fighting too. They defended the Ku Klux Klan who were trying to march in Stokey, Illinois in 1967. That's what the ACLU did. And I think the lead lawyer, it wasn't the Ku Klux Klan, it was the Nazis, I believe. I think the lead lawyer in that case was Jewish, you know. But the thing is though, while I agree, I definitely do agree that many of our liberties are being squeezed, even being taken away in some cases, and the COVID is a prime example. Well, we should probably talk about the COVID thing with the three of us were together when you were talking about the COVID. Remember that more than 2 years ago. But while I would agree that many of our liberties are being taken away, and the COVID was a very good example of that. The whole COVID lockdown and all that was a very good example of our liberties being either limited or being and some right outright being taken away. I do believe there's still enough of our fighting spirit to fight these things.
Well, but it's like, who's fighting? I mean, you have so many people are lying down for free stuff and safety. Essentially, that's the trade-off that they're getting for the giving up the liberties. And maybe a lot of them don't see it as giving up a liberty if they think they're getting something for it. But it just seems like, you give the example of fire, and it's great that they're out there, but we also see the example of the ACLU that's backing down on these things now, and
Yes.
literally has started to back away from their free speech advocacy, or at least their unconditional free speech advocacy. Yeah, it's just kind of scary. But I did want to mention one other thing on the thankfulness thing, and I know we'll probably head back that way on the conversation too. But I think one of the issues with thankfulness as well is that thankfulness has to be voluntary. I mean, so there has to be, it has to have something to do with voluntary interaction. And with too many things with government, I think part of the reason why there's so few people who are thankful is because with government, people see things as an expectation or a right, and there is no, like with somebody who's charitably giving, you don't have to sort of convince somebody that you're a good person and merit it. You just simply expect it, and therefore the thankfulness sort of disappears, I think. So I don't know, just another observation to throw in there.
Well, it does. We have seemed to have lost that ability to. Let me restart. Thankfulness is a choice, right? You have to choose to be thankful for what it is. Because it's very easy if you're just kind of to be a victim, and essentially, and it's much more difficult to choose to say, yeah, I fell and broke my arm, but you know what? It could have been worse. It could have gotten displaced. It could have needed surgeries and pins, and so I'm going to be thankful that it wasn't worse. And I'm not going to dwell on the fact that I've been inconvenienced and in pain for a few months. I'm going to focus on the fact that it could have been worse. I got decent health care, and I'm able to, to kind of move on with my life. And so I'm thankful for that. And I'm not going to dwell on the fact that I had an accident and broke my arm. I'm thankful it wasn't worse. And how many times in the last few years I've had to do that. I'm becoming quite good at it. But it's important. And I want to talk a minute about thankfulness and religion or spirituality, because there's some of us are more spiritual than others, and others are more religious than others. But there are parallels, right? They're actually, religion and spirituality is a parallel. Religion is more a structured spiritualness than what we call spirituality is an unstructured spiritualness, for lack of a better word. But what I found interesting is I was doing some research for the show is how similar the views on thankfulness are in, say, the Quran and the Bible. And you can go off on some of the more Eastern religions and some of the older religions, and it seems to have the common thread that thankfulness is important to your completeness as a human being.
Sure.
I suppose is a word to say that. And Leon, we know you've written a book in the past about religion, so maybe this is something you want to kick off this discussion.
Well, thankfulness is a big part of Christianity.
Oh, hey, Leon, what's the name of your book, too? Just for
my book is
Fetterman moment.
Now you know why we're called Maui, and he's on the knuckleheads.
Bearing false witness. It is bearing false witness.
So it was a Biden moment.
It was a Biden moment. It's on Amazon, by the way. If you type in my name, you'll find it. Wow, you got me off guard there, Jay. Yes. No, but thankfulness is a big part of Christianity. Now, you spoke about Christianity and thankfulness in Christianity, thankfulness in Islam. Well, both of those religions are Abrahamic religions, and they both claim Abraham as the father of their faith. And many of the teachings in both are quite similar. Okay, now their structure is different and all that and stuff in terms of Islam. But in Christianity, one of the founding principles embedded in there is our thankfulness for the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross, because he died for us on the cross and well, supposedly. He died for us on the cross, and accepting that his death, his sacrifice, is our key to our salvation. Now, there are a lot of nuances, there are a lot of things that I have some disagreements with, but I'm just telling you what the principles are. But the whole thing, though, is that our thankfulness is a big part of our faith, because we are thankful to Christ for coming to save us from sin and death, and we are thankful as a result to his Father, God Almighty, for having his Son sacrificed for us. Now, some of that I don't believe. I have to tell you that. I have to, full disclosure, I don't believe. But those are the concepts. But thankfulness, though, being thankful to God, is a big part of our Christian faith. It's a very, very big part of it. And we always thank God for our blessings. Like, even when I pray, I'm having a meal with my family in particular, especially, I always thank God for the meal and the nourishment that this food will give to our bodies. So thankfulness is a big part of it. It's a big, big part of it. And I think there are other teachings that are stated in other ways that surely illuminate and highlight this thankfulness within the faith.
Yeah. Well, I think thankfulness is part of what makes you a complete human being, right?
Indeed,
It
yes.
makes it takes you from a selfish creature, a selfish animal, takes you right into something that is a human being that makes you appreciative of the world around you and your existence.
Yes,
Because of that. Anything, any words on that, Jason?
No, I just maybe expand just a tiny bit on what I was saying before. I think, when you know that, I guess if thankfulness comes from maybe some action that has nothing to do with anybody else, like you said, you fell and hurt your arm and it could have been worse, then that's something that definitely is almost a spiritual context, it seems like, to it. But when it has something to do with the thankfulness or gratitude of getting some assistance from somebody else, I think it only comes by recognizing that person, there's somebody on the other end of that who had an opportunity cost, right? They did something for you, and you tend to have some thankfulness or gratitude from that. But when it's just the invisible man over there and we don't see who we're getting it from, I think it's a lot easier to lose the concept of thankfulness, right? If you just sort of expect it and you'd have no idea where it came from.
Well, within Christianity, there's a verse in the Bible that says that we should walk by faith rather than by sight. And even though we don't see that entity we call God, we don't see him, but Christians believe that we do not see him in some sort of physical presence, but we do see his works. Like, if we look at the beauty of creation, we believe that's the work of God. If we see, like, I remember my first son, almost 40 years old now, when I held him in my arms, I held him before my wife. She had a cesarean section. And it was probably one of the most beautiful moments. It's probably the most beautiful moment I've ever experienced in my entire life. Well, probably the birth of my second son probably is close to that, but I already experienced the first one. But when I held that little boy in my arms, I felt this must be the work of some God, because I don't know how anything else could have put something so beautiful together.
Yeah. We've got about 5 minutes left, gentlemen, so I want to go around the table and say what we're thankful for. And I think Leon really just started us off. Leon, do you want to finish what you're thankful for there? Take a minute.
Well, I'm thankful for my boys. They're both in their late 30s now. Soon, one is soon to be 40. Thankful for my wife, for all the years we've been together. And I'm thankful that even though I was born someplace else, I'm thankful that I was able to make a life here in this republic.
Okay. Thank you, Leon. Jason.
I think for me, I'm certainly thankful for the health of my family and friends, and so that's always an important thing. And I hope, thankful that your arm didn't get hurt worse.
Hey, after the last year, I'll take the arm, right? You know? We had a rough last year, so I'll take the arm. I'll take the arm. This is an improvement.
Well, you know, I'm also thankful that we've grown up in a place where at least we can experience the concepts, the philosophy of liberty, even if we're seeing some of that eroded in front of us at the moment. I can't imagine what it would be like to grow up in another part of the world where maybe you never know it and you're not even allowed to know it. That's, so yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine if somebody was growing up in North Korea. You know, I guess I'm thankful that, you know, I have the perspective to be able to see, hey, there's this and that, and some people who are growing up in that don't see anything else. So yeah.
I am thankful for all the opportunities that I have been granted over the last few years, and the fact that I'm actually still here to take care of those. You know, in the last year and a half, that wasn't always necessarily certain, and you know, I'm able to see the things that are around me. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that my children and grandchildren are all happy and healthy, as you know, as most of us are. You know, that's the most important thing in life, that those you love and those you care about are healthy, and that they're happy, and that they're becoming the citizens that, you know, they want to be. Not necessarily the human beings you want to be, but they are becoming the citizens and the human beings that they want to be, and that their fundamental ethics are you know, they follow the humanity that you wish them to follow as you raise them. So I'm essentially ecstatic and grateful for that. I'm thankful for those here at Access Sacramento who have allowed me to go on this journey. It's been a wonderful journey. I mean, Gail Morgan, our producer, we're thankful for that. We're thankful for the producer that preceded him, Lee Welter, who is, you know, was the captain of this ship for a long time. I'm thankful for John Cameron and Richard Fields, who were kind of my predecessors here in this particular chair, and they come back as guests and kind of co-hosts on a continual basis. It's a wonderful learning tool. Those are a wonderful learning tool for me. I'm thankful for Travis and Rick, the production professionals here at Access Sacramento, who help us get ready for the show, who help Gail in the studio push buttons when it's needed. You know, we make sure we're wired and sound decent, and make sure all the lights and everything are proper. You know, it's very special, and you know, Rick and Travis, I now get to work with them on a regular basis, and they are unique and special human beings, and you know, I'm thankful that I have them in my life.
And if I may add, as we close the show, the most important person that I'm thankful for is the next generation in my line, which is my grandson. He's 6 years old. He's quite a handful. He's coming to spend Thanksgiving with me, being thankful again. And it's going to be 9 days of a labor of love. So I'm truly thankful for that.
Yeah. Any last thankfulness, Jason? You want to toss one on the table before we go?
Hey, I'm thankful that it's basketball season and I'm getting to see some great games of my son's basketball team.
There you go. That's a good one. You know, but most importantly, I think we are all thankful for you, the viewer out there who sits there and allows us into your living room on a regular basis, who spends time with us and is willing to hear, willing to listen, willing to be a part of our lives, and willing to, you know, be a part of your community. And that is the willingness to listen the willingness to hear is an undiscussed part of free speech.
Yes.
Because we all talk about having the right to speak, but you know, if you shut somebody else up, you've also taken away someone's right to hear. And that's an important thing as we move forward. And we want to thank you for being here with us. Thank everybody for joining us. Thanks Access Sacramento again. And please remember to love everybody.
On the 29th.
Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm James Just, and with me today is John Cameron. And we've got a bunch of interesting topics on tap today, John. We've got journalists, you know, hoping to find about the threat to freedom of the press. We've got government and welfare stacking up against private charity, economic disaster in Netherlands, and maybe a food disaster in the Netherlands is kind of on the horizon. But let's start, and potentially killer robots in San Francisco, as kind of maybe we end the show on that one. But to start, we want to talk about Biden's spending spree. And Biden's spending spree is unprecedented, which is saying something coming off the heels of Trump.
Yes, yes. Well, the Recovery Act, or what did they call it? Basically the giveaway that was supposed to be anti-inflationary, but was actually inflationary, and was really a green initiative in disguise that for some reason the Republicans signed off on. What's like most government spending, there's the spending that everybody knows about, and then through executive action alone, not counting the student loan thing, he's spent $500 billion. So not only the trillions, and the fact that we added $1 trillion in debt in about 6 months, went from 30 to 31 billion, almost overnight. And there's really, when you look at it, you could almost make a case. Well, if you were drunk, you could make a case that spending all that money during the COVID lockdowns might have made sense. Not spending all of it, but spending some. I'm not saying as libertarian I want to do that, but you could almost make a case for it. You can't really make a case for what they did in paying people 1 2/3 as much money not to work as they were paid working. But you could sort of like squint and have a couple of drinks and say, well, that makes sense, coming out of COVID. But, everybody thought that we would basically, after everybody was freed from the COVID lockdowns, all this pent up, money these people were sitting on, and, the fact that they hadn't been able to do anything or spend any money and all the businesses could open back up. There was no reason whatsoever to throw more money on the fire of money that they already built, and they did that. And then on top of that, they decided to spend even more money in this bill that was designed to supposedly fight inflation by creating more debt and throwing more money on it. That's kind of like leaving the arsonists in charge of firefighting when they started the fire and were supposed to put it out. But the off-the-book spending, the executive, using this imperial executive power, that's what frightens me. The fact that these clowns that we keep electing are getting away with that. They just, if they can't get a bill through Congress, then they just make an executive order to go do whatever they want, and that's scary to me.
Yeah, the fact that we have so much of our government is now done by signature rather than following the process is actually far scarier than, there's politicians, they're spending money to get votes, right? They're buying votes at this stage. It's just what it is. They're paying off their constituents, which is why our country is so divided, because it's divided against who gets, who's sucking at which teat.
Teat.
And which teat.
I had to modify your language.
Yeah. And so we've got this whole system in place where, what was it? Eisenhower called it the military-industrial complex, and I've said it here before. We have all kinds of industrial complexes now tied to the government.
The homelessness industrial complex, the medical COVID industrial complex, the education teachers union industrial complex, the green complex is the most frightening, because they're, the Greens are scary, because they at least used to pretend like they were environmentalists, and we'd always say green on the outside, red on the inside. Now they don't even pretend. It's basically just red on the outside, and the green stuff is just simply an excuse to break all the rules and throw the Constitution out the window. You can't do anything for else, but for the environment, for Mother Earth, you can do it.
Yeah. For Mother Earth or for the children, right? It's for not just Mother Earth, it's Mother Earth and the future children, right? It's always the future children.
I'm wondering how future children benefit being saddled with $31 trillion in debt, and it's just going to keep going up and up and up. I mean, if you took your kids into your dining room and had a family meeting and said, you know what, Mother and I are going to go on a cruise. Now, unfortunately, the house that you thought you were going to inherit, you can't do that because we're taking a loan out on the house to go on this cruise. But we're doing it so that you can stand on your own instead of, us support. I mean, it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And the green stuff is the craziest. I mean, if you're interested in the environment, why would you not want more nuclear power and more natural gas? But what you want is more bird choppers that eventually you're going to have to pull down and get rid of, and you can't recycle any of that. All those batteries and battery cars, it's just crazy.
Oh, the batteries are going to be an environmental disaster coming
Already
up.
are. Yeah.
It's just going to be a huge environmental
when they
disaster.
catch on fire,
and who's going to
can't put it out?
And they're going to blame the capitalists for that, right? They're going to blame the manufacturers and the people who.
Oh, speaking of, it's not on here, but I'm
Yeah.
going to bring it up because it's so hilarious. The state of California was putting together a hearing about why gas prices are so high. Mind you, this is the state of California that requires gas to be specially formulated in California, requires cars to have special emissions to use the special gas, has the highest gas taxes in the country, and they wanted the gas,
And don't forget
the
the
oil,
general business taxes as well.
the oil companies to come to this hearing. And you know what that would have been? A kangaroo court where they convinced everybody it was the oil company's problem. And the local paper, the Commie Rag, the Bee, they were aghast that the oil companies decided not to show up.
Why would you
They said,
participate in a show trial? Yeah.
I'm not going to participate in a show trial. Anyway.
I'm not going to go up there and be part of your future campaign spending, your campaign commercials.
But that
I'm just
wasn't
not
even
gonna
on
do
the
it.
list. But
Yeah, but
spend. In the past, the Republicans at least paid lip service to being fiscally responsible. And Obama's huge spending led to basically a revolt called the Tea Party. Something curious is going on in the studio, and I don't know what it is. Anyway, now it's like people, well, we accept that. The government is just going to print money hand over fist, and there's nothing we do about it. I want to see somebody stand up and say, enough, enough of this. Some politician have some chutzpah.
Well, there's a couple of them, but no one listens to them, right?
Well, there's three.
I know Amash has been out there talking about, but he's not elected anymore. So.
No.
Yeah, but he does know how things go. But talking about your environmental disasters, the Netherlands we'll kind of move on, is going to close about 3,000 farms to comply with EU environmental rules. And of course, these are small family farms. These aren't the big corporate farms that people like to complain about. What's going to happen is the corporate farms are going to take over these family farms because they're the only ones who can afford to comply with these goofy EU rules. And so, to save the environment, they're going to destroy family farming in the Netherlands, and the rest of Europe is going to follow.
Well, it's actually even worse because the Netherlands exports and creates an awful lot of food. And nitrogen fertilizer in the Netherlands is a minuscule, even if you go along with the green footprint stuff and carbon capture and the fact that nitrogen being released through fertilizer causes nitrogen is inert, so I don't know how it can be a problem. But then who's going to feed all the people that the Netherlands used to feed? And the nitrogen part of it is a minuscule, tiny bit. If Germany would have just left their nuclear power plants running instead of burning all the coal they had to burn to replace it, it would have been 100 times what the Netherlands is going to save by closing these farms. So, if we would have put out the fires in California, the fires we had that we could have easily prevented were the same as running an additional 14 million cars on our highways for 2 years. I mean, the decisions people are making are insane. They are not logical. That's what happens when radical environmentalists get into power, and they are in the EU, because the EU, flat out, just like the UN, has said that no, capitalism is wrong, it's bad, and we can't save the planet until we get rid of capitalism. And what they haven't figured out is reading a history book that shows that every time there's a socialist or communist government, it basically destroys the environment. So, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. What we talked about on a previous show. What was the country in the Far East that basically overnight illegalized what we would call industrial fertilizer, non-natural fertilizer, non-organic fertilizer, and people were starving within weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget. I knew we talked about that, but
Yeah.
I don't remember the country. And if I do say one, it'll be wrong. So I
One
don't
of
have
those
to go.
countries over there.
I don't want. Yeah, some one of those countries, and they did this. It's not Thailand, but it's somewhere in that area. And they did, and they can cause mass starvation. And we know this is what happens. Mass starvation happens when you end up with centralized control of food production. It happens every single time.
It happened in the Ukraine when Stalin forced people off their farms onto collectives. 4 million, 6 million, 7 million Ukrainians starved. But he did that on purpose to get rid of the Ukrainians. So
Yeah. And how many in China starved when Mao, the great leap forward?
50 to 100 million.
Yeah, it's just, starvation.
But we
because
need this socialist communist world. Woo, because it's always worked. No, it hasn't.
it's always, because
It's never worked.
it's for the people, but it's
What
the little
works
guy
is
suffers.
capitalism. Capitalism works
It's just 'cause
always, everywhere.
Yeah.
Always has, always will.
it is crazy. But speaking of working, does government welfare stack up against private charity?
You want a short segment? I just say no, and we can move on.
Well, it's pretty obvious, right? Just if you look at the way government procures budgeting, just simply by government budgeting, it tells you that they're not going to be as efficient.
Well, and then one size fits none. What private charities do is because they have limited resources, they use them wisely. But they look at each individual case and find out what people need and give that to them. Well, they don't give them what they think they need. They give them what they actually need. They handhold people. They promote nuclear families. We couldn't have that. But the general rule of thumb is that in government welfare or a government program aimed at helping the poor or the unhoused or whatever, 70% of the money goes to the bureaucracy, 30% goes to the people that they're trying to help, and since it's a one size fits none, they very seldom ever help anybody. And in private charity, 70% plus goes to the people who need or in need, and only 30% goes to overhead. So it's an open and shut case. There's only on record by an organization that was supposedly objective, 3 out of 60 cases where government was more efficient at delivering help to those in need than charity, which I call the private sector. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's pretty bad. It's a bad track record. Really, really bad.
Yeah, they don't have much. There's not much incentive, and what happens?
No incentive.
with
There's
any-
actually a disincentive because governments are like any other animal. They want to grow and multiply.
And that
they
loses their
do.
focus, right? The difference between charities is they're laser focused on their mission, and that's it. They don't try to do things. They don't have these broad social goals, right? They're just, hey, I want to help feed these hungry people in my neighborhood.
The Jones family don't have a roof over their head. Let's find them a roof. They don't have enough food on the table. Let's put food on the table.
Yes, they're not.
Let's go ask the grocer, give us the food. Of course I'll give you the food.
Yeah.
I like the Joneses, wish we could offer them a job. Oh, maybe I can. We need somebody to work the night shift cleaning up. I mean, that's how problems get solved. The government is just the government.
Yeah, well, you fill out this
Bad,
paperwork.
very bad. Would not recommend.
Fill out this paperwork, wait for an appointment to go see a caseworker. Hopefully the caseworker knows what they're doing and is not burnt out, and actually send you just some resources for you to go and follow through with, instead of just having you go follow through with the resources that are there and available. You create actually extra steps, and you can understand how the well-meaning people can fall for it. You understand how well-meaning people, well-meaning individuals say, "Oh, okay, I get it. Those things need to be done," and so we want. You can see how people want the government to do it, but the reality is the government is terrible at this kind of thing.
Government is terrible at every kind of thing.
Yeah.
I challenge you to find something that the government is better at, other than being inefficient, ineffective, and spending money it doesn't have, than the private sector or or even private charitable organizations.
Revenue collection. Government's
Well,
great
they're-
at revenue
they're-
collection.
They're even
It's
bad
the only
at
thing
that.
California can do is collect taxes. And another thing they are good at, John, is suppressing free speech, which brings us up to our next section. Are real journalists starting to recognize that prosecuting Julian Assange, good Lord, I can speak, poses a grave threat to freedom of the press, the very freedoms. I am having trouble today here, John.
That's
the
all
very
right.
freedoms.
That's all right. I'll talk.
The very
Famous
freedoms
for
that
doing that.
these members of the press count on, they're willing to throw away because they don't like Julian Assange.
Well, they didn't like Julian Assange, but now the writing on the wall has become so clear that even the New York Times and 4 other major blamestream, whatever you call it, mainstream media organizations with a big history, and these are organizations that have. What's really silly is these newspapers actually publish the information that Julian Assange got a hold of, and weren't prosecuted for doing that, but Julian Assange was. And they're starting to realize that it's really, at first they said, well, he's not a real journalist, so he doesn't get the protections we real journalists get. And it dawned on them recently, because the New York Times wouldn't have come out in support of his freedom of the press, that the government could just decide that even real journalists who work for the New York Times don't have that kind of protection. And if they publish stuff that shows us to be the liars, thieves, cheats that we are, we can throw them in jail, for 160 years, I think, is what Assange is facing. Yeah.
And there's nothing in the Constitution that says journalists are the ones who get freedom of speech. It's freedom of the press. And remember, at the time, the press was literally the press. It wasn't, corporate news gathering organizations. It was quite literally the printing press, the physical printing press. The ability to reproduce and spread ideas, whether they were true or not, is not relevant. It's you have the ability to discuss your ideas. And spread them and advocate for them. You don't have the right to be violent, but beyond that, you have the right to kind of say what you want.
Do you remember, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Do you remember that?
Hey,
Is that before your time?
I've got lots of broken bones in my life, and not once has a word broken them.
Word, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and people always say, oh, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Yeah, you can.
If you honestly believe you saw a flame of fire, you're allowed to.
Yeah.
You're allowed.
I don't know. They teach women not to yell rape when somebody's trying to rape them, but to yell fire. So do we prosecute them for, yelling out fire when there's no fire?
Yeah, because
No.
the point is of not yelling fire in a crowded theater is that you're not allowed to create panic. That's the idea. You're not allowed to disturb.
Hold on. Does that mean the government has to stop doing all the stupid stuff it's doing? Because it's certainly creating panic. No, the Assange thing is tough because, he simply, I guess they're saying that some of the stuff that Assange released was espionage stuff that put people at risk. But did he put more people at risk through releasing information that showed the thievery and the lying and the spying and all the rest of that our government agencies were doing, or did he help more people by it? Is there a trade-off there?
Well,
So and all those people he put at risk are spies, should we be having spies everywhere spying and doing skullduggery and dirty deeds anyway? No, as a libertarian, no. That's not our job.
No,
it's
we're
not our
sitting here-
government's job.
We're spying on the rest of the world, and then we complain when the rest of the world spies on us. Hello? You can't complain about what you do. If you're going to behave a certain way, and then other countries are going to behave the same way towards us, and then you're going to pitch a fit over it,
Yeah.
you better clean
So
up your own act.
we'd be fine with the Chinese government launching drones to strike at people they label terrorists on U.S. soil, right? We'd be okay with that? No, we wouldn't, folks. No, we wouldn't. No, this is a farce, and I think maybe there is hope in the world. Maybe there are puppies. Maybe there are nice videos about kittens, and maybe the lamestream media is realizing that if the government prosecutes one person, they can just choose to prosecute all people
Yeah, if you're
for whatever they want.
yeah, if oh my God,
Prosecutorial. It's
thank
a hard
you, John.
word.
My
It's a hard
God,
word.
is what's
I don't
protecting
want to
you?
have to
You're
say
not
it
protected.
twice. No,
right?
no.
If that's what's protecting you, you're not protected at all. And speaking about not being protected at all, San Francisco, we're going to move down the street down to the San Francisco Bay Area, has allowed police to deploy killer robots in what they claim is certain exceptions. But I've seen this exception thing before. It's what they used to use for SWAT teams that they now use for all kinds of things that weren't initially.
Well, every town of 6,000 people now has a tank and a SWAT team, and a hostage negotiator and all that other stuff. The militarization of the police. Yet they don't prosecute people for crimes of property. They don't protect small businesses. They don't do any things that we think that police need to do. But somehow they need killer robots who aren't allowed to have weapons, but they are allowed to carry explosives in certain. Now, this is up for a vote. I don't think it's been finally approved. And I think the outrage throughout the world, even in the liberal lamestream press and media, is so strong that they might not do it.
Well, they did vote to do it. Now they may pull it back. You know,
Yeah.
maybe one of those things, a preliminary vote and all that kind of how it goes. You know, but
Yeah, and they say only senior police officials may authorize the use of force with these robots. But that's a pretty nebulous phrase.
yeah,
You know, who's senior? Is that a police sergeant or a police captain? Is that the police commissioner?
Is it the police
who's
chief, the assistant
senior?
police chief. Yeah, who gets to decide? Who gets to make that decision? And as we all have seen, once we give them that power, it becomes a slippery slope. They start to use it more and more often because once you have the ability, you're going to use it. You just are.
if you or I put explosives on anything, or even had explosives or made explosives, we'd go to prison for a very long time. But the people in San Francisco are fixing to attach them to killer robots. So it's going to be interesting. Another reason not to go to San Francisco, folks.
Yeah. Well, here's another reason not to be. Good Lord, to not trust our potential leaders. The California gun data breach, they called it, was unintentional.
Unintentional.
Unintentional. It was just incompetence. They didn't follow their own rules, and they didn't know or follow the rules.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. And that's how come that's not better. The fact that Department of Justice officials don't know the rules or don't follow the rules
and
is
they
actually worse than corruption.
Incompetence, corruption.
This kind of incompetence
We got a kakistocracy running
is
here.
worse.
But the fact that this is the second data breach, right? The first one was prior to the Supreme Court throwing out all these anti-constitutional or non-constitutional laws about carry and permits and all the rest of that. The second one of 160,000 folks on the list who applied for permit to carry was 5 days after the Supreme Court decision that threw out all that stuff. And just to add fuel to the fire of why we should allow the government to do anything, they didn't know how, nobody in the department knew how to fix it for 2 days. And when somebody looked at it and reported that it indeed was actual people's private data, they said, no, that couldn't be the case, and they didn't pull it down. And because somebody else looked at it and said, no, it wasn't private data, it's just general statistics. We put up statistics. But when they put up the database with the statistics, they put up the database with everybody's address and name. So I don't know if I believe that it was unintentional.
Well, even if it wasn't unintentional,
Incompetence is, yeah.
If I park in front of my house, I get a $50 ticket, right? Where's their penalty? What kind of penalty do they get? If they're not going to pay a higher penalty for breaching the constitutional protections of 160,000 people, then what is going on? Why do I pay a higher price for parking in front of my house than they do for violating the constitutional rights of 160,000 people?
Well, No, they have the oops defense. If you work for the government and you do something wrong, you go oops, and that's all that happens. You just go oops.
What if I go, oops, I forgot to put my permit on?
You don't work
my-
for the
my
government,
part?
do you?
See, it's just, I'm telling you, John, this is driving me crazy.
You're not the only one that's driving crazy, bro.
Freaking crazy, man. I pay a higher price for parking poorly than these people do for violating constitutional protections of hundreds of thousands of citizens.
Well,
It drives me crazy. Well, one more thing to drive us crazy. We got like 3 minutes. The economy is already in a rolling recession, which we're finally admitting that the economy is in a recession, right? Which we knew, 4 or 5 months ago, right? It was 4 or 5 months ago we knew the economy was in a recession. They still aren't really admitting it. Now they're calling it a rolling recession. But
you know why? Because you know what rolls downhill, right? Sorry, folks.
yeah, we can't say that on TV. But
What they're getting rid of in the Netherlands, fertilizer, but organic fertilizer rolls downhill.
it rolls downhill. But could this rolling recession set stocks up for a better 2023? But if stocks are down a lot, well then yeah, 2023 is going to be better than the bottom. So so stocks will have a better 2023 than 2022. If you hit the bottom somewhere in early 2023, you will, as a general of thumb, your stocks will be better.
Well, I think with NASDAQ down 30%, there's a good chance it'll be up, off its low. But the problem is anymore you can't figure it out because government controls everything, and they can just do something by whim that will throw the brightest and best minds in the investment world out the window. They have no idea what to do because government just does this crazy stuff that makes no sense over and over again. And the people that pay are widows and orphans and we old folks who are trying to be retired soon.
Yeah, the continual changing of the rules every year, every 6 months. What is it? California passed 700 new laws or 1,000 new laws last year, and it'll be the same this year. How are we all supposed to comply with these things? How are we supposed to plan our lives for the next 5, 10 years if the structure that we base our plans on changes every year?
I have no answer for that. Yeah.
Well, John, I was counting on you having an answer for that.
Okay. Well, you can't. Just you get used to chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to batten down your hatches, become isolated, self-focused, and concentrate on yourself. And
Isn't that maybe that's the underlying goal? Maybe that's the overarching goal of all these government decisions are not really to do anything they say they're going to do. It's just make people scared, make people afraid, make people isolated so that they'll let people in government do this crazy stuff to protect them. Folks, government doesn't protect you, it hurts you.
Yeah, well, the size and scope of government has grown along with our inequality over the last 20, 30 years, right? If you look at the size and scope of government and the alleged inequality that has grown, it's parallel line. These lines are parallel.
Cause and effect. Cause and effect, folks.
Just saying. We are just about out of time. Thank you for joining me, John. Thank you for watching. And we want to remember to please love everybody.
Love everybody.
And good night.
Yeah. Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, and love everybody.
Life is pretty simple sometimes.
Yeah. That's like 15 words. Yeah.
You don't need thousands of laws to tell you to be nice to somebody.
No.